Hi everyone, welcome to Cover Your Audit Scenarios with Audit AI and SAP Concur Solutions. My name is Dan Barker. I am a Director of Product here at SAP Concur, and I have the fortunate benefit of working with our data science, product, and engineering teams to build solutions that are powered by AI. And I cover the audit and compliance portfolio within SAP Concur, and we leverage AI throughout. And so I'm really excited to tell you a little bit and talk to you a little bit about how we're doing that and the story and the journey that we've been on to create some of these solutions, which is not only interesting, at least it is to me from a data science perspective, but it's also unique within the market. So before we do that, I thought it would be a good idea to kind of just orient on the use case and what are we really doing? What problem are we trying to solve? Because I think that helps provide a little bit of context for folks in the audience that may or may not be familiar with the expense process and the tools that we have today. So let's start with the user journey here. Before we get into AI or ML, what's the problem that we're solving here? Because that's very important, right? And so when we think about audit, what we're talking about is employees who need to not only spend money for work, could be travel related or non-travel related, but at some point you want to get reimbursed as an employee for those costs and those expenses. And so what you're doing is you're creating an expense report, you're submitting it, and hopefully it gets approved so that you can get reimbursed. That's basically what we're talking about here. We're talking about the audit customer journey for either travel or non-travel related spend. So it could be an employee looking to book travel, hotel, airfare, ground transportation, and then ultimately going on the trip where they're actually spending money or making purchases related to that trip. It could also be non-travel related. Maybe you need something for your home office, or there could be other things that you're paying for that don't have anything to do with travel, but certainly requires you to spend money either out of pocket or via a credit card, personal credit card, or even a company provided one. So that's the process that we're talking about, some sort of spend event in which the employee is using our mobile app or our web version of our product to get the receipt information, the expense information entered into Concur to create the expense report and ultimately going through a workflow to get approved. Every company is a little different here. Some companies have one step, some companies have 3 or 4, but ultimately at some point there is an audit that happens to make sure that the spend is happening within policy, that it is correct, and there isn't any major issues with that. And that audit step is performed by humans, and it can be very difficult to do because they're looking at every single receipt, every single expense, every single expense report and line item. It's a very difficult job. There's a lot of volume, and sometimes the volume can go up and down based on what's happening, maybe in your company, a large travel event, a conference, but it could also include things like different languages and contexts. So it's really hard to do the job of making sure the expense was entered correctly, much less ensuring that it's adhering to the rules or the policy that the customer has. And so that's the job that we're solving here, helping the audit step and the human auditors perform that task. It's a perfect challenge for AI and ML because there's a lot of variation to it. It's difficult and it's continual. So having some sort of technology to help augment that job and that task is extremely valuable. And that's what we're using AI to do. So before we jump into that, now that you kind of have an understanding of the use case in the broader context, let's zoom in a little bit more specifically and give AI and ML a little bit more of an identity. What is it actually doing when we're talking about an audit? What are the steps involved that are a part of this? Well, let's take a common use case where maybe you went for dinner and you had a meal, and you have a meal receipt, and you need to enter that meal information into Concur Expense. So there's really 2 things that you're doing. You're entering in the data that's in here. This could be the date, the vendor, the amount of the spend, the tip that you had. That's part of it. But you also In some cases, in most cases, you need to take a picture of the receipt. So you need to enter in the data along with the image of the receipt as a part of allowing for this audit process to be performed. And so what the human auditor has to do is they have to review all of this information. They have to look at it, look at the line items, understand what has been purchased, and begin to make some judgments or assessments based on what they see. So an example could be you might have a policy where you're not allowed to have alcohol when you go for a lunch or a meal. So that could be one thing that the auditor is looking for. So that's one thing that our AI and ML tools are doing. It's reading through, scanning the image, looking to see if it finds some sort of alcohol within the line item. That can be difficult to do when you're looking at a lot of different meal receipts. Another thing it might be doing is evaluating the tip. You could have a policy within your company that says you're not allowed to have a tip more than, say, 20%. This one, I think, is roughly 25%. So there's a little bit of mental math that would have to be done there to say, is that within policy? Is that under or over 20%? And again, the auditor has to do that. Now, what's unique about this from a data science and engineering perspective is that our technology has the ability to do that. It can read handwritten information, and OCR, or optical character recognition, extract that information and make assessments based on that. So this allows our technology to do that. But ultimately, the human auditor needs to do all of this. And so without AI, the human auditor basically does all of the work. They have to look at every receipt, look at every line item, and it's very arduous. However, with AI, the machine, if you will, the machine auditor, or the technology and modeling that we're building, does some or all of the work, meaning the technology and AI is smart enough to know what to look for and evaluate whether or not something needs to be done. And if everything looks good, AI can actually perform the task outright, avoiding the need for a human to have to do it. So this gives AI and ML here a little bit more of an identity, and hopefully this helps you understand how it would be used within the context of an audit. All right, let's take a step back here and think about and talk through how did we get to the point where we needed to use AI for audit? What's the backdrop? What's the story here? And this is where things get really interesting and unique for Concur. So the beginnings of the service start with the fact that we have a travel and expense product. It's a market-leading tool. It's sold globally in just about every market you can imagine. And a lot of the customers that we were serving as a part of building the T&E product suite needed help with auditing. Auditing was a common, frequent challenge. And so what Concur did is they started a managed business service with human auditors as a service and a product that could be purchased by our customers that would help them with the audit step. So basically, it's human auditors looking at the receipts and evaluating policy on behalf of our customers. And it was extremely popular because, as we've mentioned, it's a very difficult job. And so this is one of the reasons why we're very familiar with audit. It's not just a technology product for us, it's a business problem that we have within Concur because we have an audit service and we're doing it for thousands of customers globally. So we understand what the challenges are. And these are challenges that you might be facing within your company, or companies who have this need have growing pains. As they grow, more expense volume, more receipts come in. As they expand to new markets, new languages come in, new rules come in. And so as you grow, it makes the job potentially more difficult to do. And it often, in some cases, requires more budget. Maybe you need more money to add more auditors to your team to keep up with the growth. But there's more than that. There's also team performance, meaning as we're performing the audit, we don't want it to take too long. We want to make sure that employees are happy, that they're being reimbursed quickly, accurately, but also very quickly. You don't want to wait weeks and months to be reimbursed for a business-related expense. There's also the ongoing change and development of compliance needs within different markets. There could be laws or regulations that are either changing or being added or removed, and the audit team needs to be aware of them so that they're aptly making sure that things are being done in accordance to law. And then lastly, there's just general audit coverage. There might be things that you want to start looking for. Companies want to evaluate, add or remove from their audit process. So all of these things change, and it's a difficult task to not only audit accurately and efficiently, but to deal with all this change and all this variation. And so one of the benefits to having this managed business service within Concur is that we've started to see some patterns. What are the audit checks that some of these other companies have? What are the frequent receipt and policy checks that most customers are looking to do? We saw some patterns, and we were able to understand where some of the largest needs were across the customer base. But we were doing this and evaluating this and growing this service with really no AI or ML. It was 100% human-based. And it's one way to solve the problem, but it's not very scalable. It's still requiring a human to do all of the work. And that's when we started to think, hey, there might be a better way to solve this problem using AI and ML. And so that's what we did. This is where things get super interesting, right? Where we've got a managed business service. It's been in market for years. It's covering a travel and expense product that's sold globally. We have a lot of receipt information. We should be able to build AI models to help augment the service. So that's exactly what we did. Again, knowing what the patterns were, knowing what most customers are looking for, understanding what the policy and receipt needs are, we could start to think about what models could we start to develop to make those tasks, those repetitive, frequently needed audits easier for not only us, but our customers. So that's exactly what we did. We stood up an audit, we'll call it a machine service behind the scenes that was learning and being compared to the human audit service. And it gave us a great opportunity to learn and let the machines understand where they were making mistakes and become more accurate. And over time, our machines became quite efficient and accurate at performing the job. And so these models were developed over a few years using our audit service, and they became good enough to where we started to use them in production with our own audit team. But that wasn't good enough. We said, hey, we love that we're building technology to help Concur, but we also want to make it available to customers. So now we have 2 new audit products, which again were built from the ground floor on AI and ML. Intelligent Audit, which is an AI ML backed version of the Concur audit service that we've just talked about, the human audit service. But we also have Verify. We're giving customers access to our AI and ML capabilities. So this allows a customer's audit team to leverage that same technology and capability within their audit teams, which is quite powerful. And it gives them access to all the data that we have. You know, it would be hard for any customer to build anything like this because of the limited access to the receipts that they have. But when you're using our technology, you're leveraging the information that we have globally as a market-leading T&E product. And that's a very powerful outcome and unique one. Okay, so let's move on, talk a little bit about the product specifically. We don't have a lot of time to get into how Verify works or how Intelligent Audit works, but I do want to quickly mention that there's a unique approach that we're taking to doing this. And it's not just about technology. It's because there's a lot of variation here. We want to use, and we are using, humans and technology together. So the Verify service, which is again for customers who want to use our technology to make their audit process easier, it's basically right now built for smaller companies with low audit complexity. And we're working really, really hard to further improve that and make it beneficial for larger customers. But for customers who are larger, have a lot of spend complexity or global, this is where Intelligent Audit is available and can cover those use cases. The point here is that we're using both humans and technology together. The power of the machine to look at things 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and do things at coverage and scale that are virtually impossible for a human auditor provides a lot of benefit and value, but it's not perfect. The machine, in some cases, can't do the job or has a difficult time doing the job, and humans are still very much needed. And as a part of that, we have humans in the loop as a part of our product and service. So if there's context needed, or if there's a high level of complexity or even judgment needed, we can leverage technology and humans in the loop to make sure that we're not only making the task easier, but we're doing it accurately in a way that actually makes the job easier. So that's unique. So let's talk a little bit more about a sample. So we've talked about the context here, expense reports. We've built some new AI based technology. One of them is called Verify. It's made available for customers. How would a customer use it in their workflow? What does that look like? Well, at a really high level, again, just a reminder, Verify is built for our customers' audit teams, and we have a self-service UI that allows them to turn all of the modeled checks that we have off and on. We have about 30 of them today. They're all AI ML backed, and this gives the customer the ability to turn them off and on. We also provide them the ability to place the Verify or AI step anywhere in their workflow. So here's an example of what this might look like. So just think about a workflow where you've got a report submission, which eventually there's an OCR step or optical character recognition that's extracting the data off of the receipt and creating those tokens that we need for our AI and ML models. And then what I'll call the AI ML engine is then evaluating the information. And there's a couple different results that can happen from that. Some of them are in high confidence and some of them are in low confidence. And our product handles both of them. This is where the human in the loop becomes a very powerful mechanism. Where we have low confidence with our modeling results, or high confidence, but it's a failure, we want to make sure that it's correct. So we have a human in the loop, and it's temporary. Today, we want to, over time, eliminate this step, but it's a part of our development process to ensure customers are getting good results, that we review that, and we turn it around within an hour. Again, this is the combination of technology and humans together. If there is no issue, and Verify looks at everything and the models say, I feel confident, everything looks good, it completely skips the human audit step altogether. And that is a powerful, highly scalable outcome. That means the auditor doesn't have to spend time doing the arduous task that Verify performed for them, and they can spend their time elsewhere doing other things that are arguably in some cases more valuable or difficult to do without a product like that. And ultimately, the employee is going to be reimbursed more quickly and faster as a result of that. So this is just a quick example of what this might look like for a customer leveraging our technology. Now, we're using AI and ML across the product suite. It's not just for audit. And so when we think about audit, there's a part in the front end of this journey that I want to quickly mention in our mobile experience. So our mobile app has a feature called Expense It, which helps extract the information off of a receipt. So things like the amount, the currency, the date, and it's also not just extracting data, but it's doing predictions. It's leveraging the data that we have to say, what is the expense type? And in some cases, this is very difficult for an employee to know what the right answer is. So we can use AI and ML to help predict what the answer should be, making it a little bit easier for the customer. And then again, we're extracting all of the other field level information off the receipt that needs to be a part of submitting that expense as an expense report. So our mobile app is leveraging AI in different ways. Our audit process, again, we've already talked about this. It's looking at things at the receipt level and the policy level. And it's also looking at data that in ways that's very difficult for a human to do. Looking at data over days, weeks, months, or even years to identify patterns and trends that may or may not be fraud and anomaly related are another part of this process for us. We also use it in travel. So it could be travel benchmarks to help customers who are looking to book airfare to do things within policy that are convenient for them, or a hotel, helping provide hotel recommendations based on policy and information that we have. Again, making the process a little bit easier and within policy for our customers. We also leverage credit card data to, again, augment getting that expense information in, using pattern matching and making sure the expense is correct. This is just another data input mechanism for us that helps us do this solve this problem a little bit easier. And we also have an invoice product as well that is leveraging AI. So the takeaway here is that We're using AI and ML across the product suite, but we're only getting started. There's a lot of opportunity to continue to use this technology in new and unique ways. And up to this point, we have about 35, I mentioned this earlier, machine learning backed APIs in production today, which is exciting. And that number continues to grow as we learn and find out where we can solve customer problems. We're investing in development activity, data science, research, and model development to help us build out solutions and create new APIs to cover different use cases. So lastly, I want to end. We don't have a lot of time to get into the nitty-gritty technical aspects of this, but if you are an aspiring data scientist, engineer, or you're a current one, you might be thinking to yourself, well, what are the different ML models that they're using? What are the different approaches that they're taking? And I'm just going to quickly let you know, there's a number of them that we're using. Again, we have a lot of data that we have available to us. Some of it's labeled and some of it's not. But from an ML modeling perspective, we use both supervised and unsupervised learning models. So where we have more structure, maybe within our mobile app where there's user interaction, we used a supervised learning approach. And then on the back end, where maybe we don't have as much labeled information and we're not really sure exactly what the data is, we use unsupervised learning ML modeling approaches. So there's a lot of different techniques that we use depending on the use case and the part of the product suite from a modeling perspective that we have at our disposal. And this is continually evolving over time. And that's what's really, really exciting about this. We started off, augmenting our human audit service and building our AI capabilities from scratch. So it started off with very basic models in production, helping our mobile app perform some of those tasks. And that quickly migrated into using deep neural networks. From there, we migrated from basic neural networks to convolutional and recurrent network applications. And again, if you're familiar with these terms or not, look them up. You kind of get a background on what they do and how they work. And then some of the more modern and advanced modeling capabilities, such as transformers, Concur is now using those as well. So we've really matured our approach to AI and ML over the past couple of years, and we're continuing to do that with our data science and engineering teams. This is really on par with some of the other largest companies in the world who are using AI and ML, like Google. So Google is definitely a player in the AI space. They have a lot of data at their disposal. And what we're doing at Concur is on par in size and data. So it's a very unique situation for us in that we have a lot of data, and the data science application and use of that is continually evaluated to see where we can leverage that. And again, we're doing it with more expense data than anyone else in the market. And I'll end with a funny story. One of our data scientists, his name is Mike, he mentioned to me that he was talking with an engineer at Amazon, and that engineer was saying, hey, we tried to build something to evaluate receipts to make it easier for our employees, but we didn't have enough data. We didn't have the receipts. And the data scientist on our end, Mike, said, I know, we do. Concur has it. So again, it's another reason why we're able to do so many unique things in the market. And that's why it's exciting for me as a product leader to work with our data science and engineering teams to do just that. So that ends our session. Thank you for attending. If you have any other areas that you have interest in, I would highly suggest you look and evaluate other tech ed sessions that are out there. There's a lot of them to evaluate. They're all really, really good. If you want to look at what we're doing in Concur or even beyond Concur across the SAP portfolio, please take a look and sign up for some of those. And with that, I will end and say thank you for attending the session. If you have any questions about anything that we talked about today, you can reach out to me with this email or reach me at Twitter here, and I would be happy to answer. So thanks again for your time.